Hello and welcome everyone to the EdTech Spot STEM and Education episode 1. Now, I'm so happy you took the time to join us today. Now, before we begin, I just want you to let us know where you're from in the comments. Feel free to leave your name and social media handle. Now, to begin. So, here we are, the current circumstances that we are faced with. That being a pandemic that has disrupted the normal way of instructional learning and has forced us for the first part of the year into an emergency remote online learning. Not to be confused with the blended learning environment, however. But now that summer has ended, students, educators, parents, and administrators all around the world are asking the same question: how do we begin to move forward from here? For some of you, that may look like a continuation or an introduction to online school, or a combination of both face to face and online learning, where the students are only where schools are only attended once or twice a week for those technical or hands-on subjects, where teachers and students attend school by zones or districts on specific days, where students and teachers are given a pass, digital being the preferred choice, to ride school buses, where parents are surveyed on whether they prefer or have the means to keep their child or children at home, and where learning invigilated centers are set up to accommodate working families. And all of this really is to minimize travel, enforce social distancing policies, keep a record of student teacher movement and contact, and provide and maintain safe teacher student environments for learning. There are so many nuances to consider here that would determine the best approach for your school or district. And after that, we are still now faced with the second question: what is our new approach in delivering online and face to face instruction? For all good reasons, a blended learning approach appears to be the best option to transform our classrooms. But know that our schools are using tech in conjunction with various learning management systems like Schoology, Moodle, Google Classroom, and Canvas. Is that really all to it? No. We can do better than that. Don't you agree? We can do better than just posting videos, worksheets, and tests online. We can go further with STEM. For this purpose, this program was created. And here to break it down for us is Mr. Jelani Payne.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jelani. I am so glad that you're here with us. So, Jelani, for everyone who doesn't know, is a STEM and CTE educator and advocate, and a multidiscipline engineer, and has worked with many schools like the St. Michael's Secondary School and the University of the West Indies Cape campus, just to name two. He is also the head coach of Robotic Adventures, an online digital STEM program, robotics program that is, and the author of the book Survive, Strive, and Stay Alive in College, which you can catch on Amazon. Here's a digital copy of the book, a digital picture that is. The link will be posted within the chat if you want to check that out. He's also well qualified, and from our numerous conversations, very passionate about the topic of STEM in education. So, Jelani, welcome to our first episode. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. I'm glad to have you here. So, as you know, Jelani, I was engaged in a lot of teacher training during the last academic year with
Mhm.
private and public school educators, preparing them to use the online tools for learning and in addition, providing post-training support. So the training sessions focus on getting educators familiar with these tools for learning. And my assumption was that once educators saw the capabilities and the flexibility of the new online tools, that they would instinctively begin working on creative and innovative ways and just to create content and methods of delivery. But instead, I saw a replication of the traditional way of teaching, just in an online format. For many of them, their biggest challenge was getting over their fear of technology. While most of them, eventually caught up to the training, we couldn't leave anyone behind because that would have meant that his or her class would have been gravely disadvantaged. So the lessons that I've learned through this experience are: one, people will do what they know, And it is really unfair for us to assume or expect greater sometimes. You know what you know. And number two, not everyone is a lead user or an early adopter. We should not assume that all educators are super learners, right? And my last observation here is that the same pedagogy support, and this was a big one for me, the same pedagogy support that is expected from our teachers, in turn, is needed when engaging in capacity building, teacher capacity
Okay.
building. So this is what I observe in my teacher training sessions and lessons learned from that experience. So I want to know from you, Jelani, what have you observed or learned from the last academic year?
For me, I think two main things. One is that we really weren't prepared for this remote emergency environment as it relates to education that we're in. We could have been, even a tiny bit, just by simply making preparations to begin to work with blended learning environments as well as remote learning environments. Um, I know some persons may have had some training, but in general, it would have been a good thing to really start at least testing, but still on a very deep level. And then thing number two is educators, I find they have adapted very well to the digital tools, but it makes sense. They're professionals, they're doing a job, so they've adapted well, but their teaching styles have remained the same. And really and truly, it's not necessary. Given the fact that we are not in a traditional environment anymore, we can adapt fully, not just 50%, but 100% to these new tools, these digital tools, these remote learning tools that will allow us to actually implement completely different, upgraded, or updated teaching styles.
Yes, that's a very good observation, Jelani. And when you were saying that, I'm actually thinking about this quote by Google's CEO that says, technology alone will not improve education, but it can be a powerful part of the solution. And that speaks for itself that just not having these tools improve the method of delivery, it is beyond that, but it's just to assist with that journey in improving the education. So that quote really speaks for itself. I just want to welcome those who just hopped onto this stream. We are about to dive into the topic of education through STEM. Now, some of you who may have a genuine interest and may not fully aware of what STEM actually means. And there are those newer terms that are being tossed around like STEAM and STRING. So, Johnny, please break this down for those who may not fully understand what STEM, STEAM, or STREAM is all about.
All right, so I have some slides here, and I'm actually going to start a breakdown here. Right. So, what is STEM? Well, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, those are the key components. But you have some other acronyms that have developed from that, like STEAM, in which we've added art, and STREAM, in which we've added robotics. Now, you can also interchange that R with reading. With a background in engineering, there's a lot of reading. I'm pretty much a detective, more or less. Think of doctors as detectives as well. A doctor has to come in. What's the first thing they do? They ask you a whole bunch of questions, but even before that, they look at the chart from before, right? So you get an idea. So a lot of reading is involved, and of course, robotics combines the science, the technology, engineering, the art, and the mathematics all together, right? So that's why that's in there as well. Um, where did this come from? Very briefly, the National Science Foundation in the United States of America, they are whom developed the acronym. And initially, it wasn't STEM, it was SMET, SMET. Terrible. I hate it. When I first saw it,
Oh,
and I
wow.
have seen it from before, I didn't like it either.
Well, that's a fun fact there. Imagine we had SMET education, education through
SMET.
SMET. It doesn't ring as, well as STEM. It does
Yeah,
not.
STEM
Yeah.
flows off the tongue. It just rolls, right?
Yeah, it sounds much
Yeah.
better.
But what they realized, this National Science Foundation, is they recognize, you know what? We need more people in these areas because we don't have enough, right? And these are the areas which we will discuss further down, are areas in which you tend to find a lot more innovation and job creation by the nature of what the areas are, right? In science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. Also, And this is, I suppose, what really put a bee in their bonnet. They recognized, but wait a second, we have a whole bunch of people from everywhere else coming into our country, going to our universities, being taught by our teachers in these areas, and then taking it back home. And then they're innovating, they're creating jobs, they're creating new tech. And meanwhile, we're being left behind because our students don't want to do the areas because they're too hard or whatever, or they're having challenges, or some people just don't find it very interesting, very exciting. Yeah. So that's a little bit about STEM, where it came from and what it is.
So that's an interesting fun fact there. SMET education, that's interesting. I'll remember that.
Absolutely. So what do we mean when we say STEM in education? Um, we're really trying to focus on including the perspective of STEM in all subject areas. With my background, I think about everything like an engineer. Sure, I was probably born this way more or less, but it got worse as I studied a lot more, as I read a lot more, as I researched a lot more, as I got more experience. I began to focus on every little thing like an engineer. So I'm basically really and truly just a grown kid, right, with a very mature mind, very focused on, okay, I see that opportunity. Every problem is a potential opportunity. Every problem I'm thinking of, how can I solve it based on the tools that I have, which is, again, why we're focused on this presentation. Next, what we mean by STEM in education is that we want to be more efficient in implementing a lot of the updated tools that we have. For example, Google Meet, G Suite, all of these, and I mean, there's so many more tools. Jonathan can attest to this. During this pandemic, so many private companies, commercial companies, private entities gave away a lot of their content for free that they were
Yeah,
previously charging for. So
exactly.
many.
Yeah.
And I made a list of everyone I heard or saw. So I have a big list, and Jonathan knows me. So he knows I definitely did that.
He
I
does.
had, but so when we're talking about what is meant by STEM in education, we're looking at how we can then use all these tools that we have for free or even paid, and how we can use them to then bring more learning styles into the fold, or rather, reach and engage more learning styles. Also, we're looking at the new and updated technologies which appeal to these different learning styles. So, for example, a few learning styles might be, and these are the more simple ones. You have the visual learner, the auditory learner. The visual learns by seeing, auditory learns by listening. I do that. People wonder how I can listen to YouTube videos while I'm working, and I can listen to a 3 hour lecture while working. So I consume maybe about 3 to 6 hours of content every day, and it's all
Yeah.
useful stuff, not just music. Um, okay, and so then you have kinesthetic, someone that likes to touch something. Okay, they like to feel it in their hands. They must feel that roughness, that texture, and it begins to help the brain. And then there's the person that uses reading, that prefers reading a good book. That more introverted person, not a loud mouth like me at all, right? So that's what we mean when we say STEM in education. Applying that perspective to all areas of studies and ensuring that we engage all different learning styles and even teaching styles. Teachers are very involved here. Not every teacher likes to teach how they have been teaching for years.
Yes, you're right. So I guess next question that why should we use STEM in education? Because in order for it to have teachers actually engage in STEM, you need to convince them why they should use this. Why is this good to actually bring into the classroom for learning?
You see, this pandemic that hit, it has been a great motivator, a great motivator. So, for example, let's just switch out here. So you see um, all of those persons who didn't want to get into e-commerce before, all of those retail spaces, all those commercial entities. Guess what? Knock, knock, knock. Yeah, gotta do it now. Gotta do it now. And because it's in demand, for anyone who has a computer science degree, who knows how to code, who knows software dev, software development, yeah, you're making what I like to call bank. And I'm happy for you. It sounds terrible in the face of the fact that other persons are losing jobs. but yet you understand. You understand why. Or you understand why I would have briefly mentioned, hey, we could have maybe done a bit more to prepare ourselves, not just in the event of something happening, but generally for where the world is going. All right. But why use STEM in education? Well, aside from the points that I just mentioned, if we look at the trend of technological development, and not so let's dumb down the big words, right? Let's keep it very simple. In every industry, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, no matter what you're doing. In fact, you know what? Did you know that there's a tool called, I think it's called Tilt Brush? I believe it is, made by Google.
Oh,
Do you know that you can actually paint virtually in 3D space? I
but
dare you. I
this is a
double
shock
dare
for
you.
me because usually I'm all over these Google apps. So I'm surprised I don't know that one. So I
I
guess you got
dare
that edge on me.
somebody. I dare somebody. Find that app, give it to their kid today, and see if by the end of the month, forget the month, by the end of the week, they don't have that figured out. And then we have a 3D artist. You recognize that's a completely different role altogether, right? Okay. We know that machines are slowly but surely replacing many areas of human activity. A lot of these monotonous tasks, okay, great. That's a great reason to ensure that we implement STEM in education, no? Because if we know that, in certain areas or industries, we're going to be obsolete, that, they're not going to need us, they're going to start paying us less and less. In one movie, it was really scary. Like in one movie, I think it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What was interesting is I think the father, right? He was there working in the factory, and then they brought in this big machine to work next to him because it used to be two guys,
Yes.
and then they brought in this machine next to him, and it was doing it
Yeah,
faster. And then
exactly.
after that, the guy was gone,
Mhm.
and just the machine was there.
Yes. Everyone
People,
was shipped out actually. Whole company was
exactly,
sent home.
exactly. Now we're not trying to fearmonger. In fact,
No,
Jonathan
no.
is going to speak to that, but we're not trying to fearmonger. We're just sharing with you if this is where the world is going, if this is what is happening, if this is the trend, then it would make sense that we need to kind of ensure that we implement STEM. Go
Yes, yes, and as
ahead.
like
Yeah.
what Jelani said, that we are not saying that technology is going to replace a job. We're just advising you to just hop on with the trend and join the progress of redefining our roles within society. So when that time comes, that we won't be be shipped out or moved away. It's bad to ignore trends, and that is proven even in data. We should not ignore trends in weather predictions or financial predictions. So that observe the trends in technology as well and go with it so that we can be up to date on the times and be able to adapt with the moving pace of technology.
Why use STEM in education? The final 2 points. Um, because we have more efficient and affordable tools and even more resources for educators and students. But why would we not use them? Are we so addicted? And I use the word addicted because maybe that's what it is. And it's not a bad word, it's not a harsh word. It's truth. Sometimes we're so used to doing things the way that we're doing them, we become comfortable, become set in our ways. It happens to me, sure. And we have to move out of that comfort zone slowly, gradually, sure, but we do have to because if that's where the trend is. And then, of course, we want to get into STEM in education as it relates to appealing to various learning styles.
Yes, I see a comment here for someone on YouTube, and they ask if you'll be sharing the resources. Yes,
Yeah,
we.
we
Yes, if
will.
you want access to this resource bank, so yes, we will make that available to you at the end or right after the end of the show. So I'm happy that you asked that. Almost everything here, or everything, we will be sharing with you, including the presentation as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. We're really not trying to be selfish here.
no,
Um,
we're stingy.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And in fact, they were given away freely. So, okay, where are we right now in education? This is educators and students alike. Traditionally, we were in the classroom, we were reading together, practicing problems together. Um, Even some institutions had blended learning environments, like the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Tech. I know I've spoken with certain presenters, lecturers, teachers. Um, there at that institution that they were working with that blended environment. All right, and that's great, lovely. Um, and then we moved into this remote emergency environment. Remote because we cannot work together in the same space, or we shouldn't ideally, for fear of the pandemic spreading and wreaking havoc. And then there's the emergency part of it. The fact that this happened so suddenly, schools closed, everybody was home, and for example, for me, I was worried, for example, for myself and my parents, right? You know, the health isn't what it used to be. You're maturing, so I'm thinking, okay, is 2020 going to get me? And a lot of people thought that way. Now, in this remote environment, um, you are learning virtually. You have online assignments, online assessments, and I mean, I spoke to a number of teachers and students, and so that's pretty much where we are right now. Okay, well, where we were and where we are presently.
Yes, and just to insert this here, welcome to all those who are now hopping on to the stream again. Feel free to leave a comment. We will acknowledge it here. If you want to join this conversation online, do that in the comment section. We'll acknowledge it, and we will be happy to have that conversation with you. So do that in the comments. Let us know where you're from. Shout out yourself, your country. If you want to put your position or your social media handle, feel free to do that. So you were about to make an important point, Jelani, which is no one size fix all for educators or students. Yes, I want to hear what you have to say on this.
Right, that's correct. Um, I think sometimes we may tend to think, all right, everyone needs to be doing the same thing, everyone needs to be moving in the exact same direction. Not necessarily true. Everyone can move in the same direction and be driving or in different modes of transportation. Someone can go by boat, someone can fly, right? Someone can walk, someone can run. Again, not that we are in the same mode of transportation, but doing different actions. Get it? I mean, shucks, someone can develop a teleportation device, transmit and transport through time. I mean, there's so many different ways of moving. So the reason why I mentioned that is because there isn't going to be any one particular style of teaching or even for students learning um, that is going to occur. We have different, and we mentioned this. We mentioned the different types of learning styles. Okay, visual, auditory, etc. And so, of course, it would make sense that there are different teaching styles as well. And this is where STEM tools can be very useful. So
Yeah,
imagine educators having, different tools, or maybe even one tool. For example, one which we're going to share. I'm not going to speak about it. I don't want to jinx it. I want everyone to get a good grasp of it. But one of the tools that we're going to share, we're going to focus on the fact that it is for the visual learner, and then it's also for the auditory learner. It's also for the learner that likes to read. And
yes,
now, for the person that likes to touch, we may not get exactly that, but we can get very close. And
yes,
that's the
and
point of this presentation.
I like this quote as well because it takes pressure off of one app or tool being the all in all, the final solution, which could hurt many ICT projects or even school projects when IT fail because you've relied on that one tool. Where you should really be flexible enough to acknowledge that this may work for some students and this may work for another group of students. And in the event that I have to change this tool, let me move with that agile development in mind so that I can make that change quickly. So I love this approach of no one size fits all, which is good and great for the blended learning environment and fits well with STEM. So I'm really, really excited with this next section that you're going to discuss, which is where do we want to go with STEM education? Because there are countless possibilities, numerous career paths that STEM can lead our young people to. So just enlighten us on that, enlighten us on that.
So if we are going to look at where we want to go, right, then we have to look at, well, where's everybody else going? Now, not that we want to follow everyone, but again, we want to get an idea of the trend. We want to be prepared, like I initially said, right? So I think a good way to be prepared to find out where we want to go is by looking at what others are doing, right? Look at the crowd, more or less, all right, which is automation, right? Doing more autonomous tasks, tasks where you don't need humans. Okay, software development and computer science. Again, look at the pandemic. Look at what has happened. Zoom all of a sudden came out of nowhere. Tell me something, Jonathan. Have you heard of Skype? Is Skype still alive?
Skype is still there. It's still there, especially for
All right,
businesses. But Zoom
all
have
right.
really dominated the playing field. They have, and Google is stepping up behind them as well. You know,
As soon as you had Zoom, there was no more Hangouts. Hangouts was like
yes, yeah,
Google Meet,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know, I can't remember this guy's name, but I was reading up on him, the guy who the CEO of Zoom, the CEO or the founder, and that guy's biggest problem is not money, and it isn't okay. Do I need capital? No, 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 no. His biggest problem is okay. Do we have enough servers for the users that want to use our platform? That's the
Yeah,
that's the new problem that's the problem he has. Nothing
yes,
else. Every day
yeah.
he's like, okay, how many people are using the platform now? Can we maintain that?
Exactly. I've seen the notifications on the Zoom websites because they started to offer free educational discounts or packages for educators once you have a valid school account. And they have put a message out something about capacity being able to take that amount of volume of requests at this time. And that
Correct.
really goes to show where the trend is. And just the fact here that a lot of these technology companies, their profit and subscription in some cases have doubled and quadrupled and even higher. So
That's right.
you see where we're going here with this trend? Technology is the wave to catch.
Let's talk about entrepreneurship, for example. You have a lot of persons who are doing software development, computer science, who are working from home. We're talking about the gig economy. When we say gig, we mean that the person might work on a job by job basis, or even work from home, or it might be a location independent job. I have friends who don't need to live in Barbados. Look at what has happened. What's the first thing? One of the first things our prime minister did, God bless her heart. She was brilliant. Yeah, you see all of the remote workers? Yeah, come here, spend your money with us. You got 12 months. Come, bring all the money, you know, enjoy our view, our beautiful beaches, enjoy it all. We have everything here. Come and enjoy. It was brilliant on her part, right? And we have a lot, the development of a lot of small and medium-sized enterprise. Why? Because a lot of people have been, for example, let go. Terrible, but it pushes creativity and innovation. I wonder how many of those persons are STEM professionals. Okay, if we look at the COVID-19, the pandemic, which has created general uncertainty about the economy and jobs, all right? Where do we want to go given that there's uncertainty about the economy and jobs? How do we want to prepare our students? But hold on a second. Let's think about educators, for example. Do educators need to maintain the same roles or will they have changed? Because you're not in the classroom anymore. You don't need to take markers, chalk, and stuff with you to school anymore. You don't need to pack a lunch. So what am I going to do now? Which I'm sure is one of the problems that they're faced with, right? And one of the things that I have seen, as I mentioned, is the inefficient use of the new tools. For example, teachers can easily slide into a more tutorial role where they focus on being more efficient with their presentation. So students actually bear the responsibility, and these are older students, of course. We're talking at least at the secondary level, focus on absorbing the content and then the teachers really go through problems. Of course, that's because they have examinations and so on that they need to prepare the students for. Let me give you a brief example of potential efficiency here. So let's say you're a lessons teacher. Well, you can record your classes. Okay, you can record some classes and you can sell that at one price point. But then you can have in-person remote classes. So for example, using Zoom or Google Meet, I'm not advertising any particular one. You can use whatever medium you want to, but in-person remote learning classes online, right? But then you have in-person lessons also because in-person online classes are at another or a higher price point. And then you can have your highest price point because you're offering actual physical in-person lessons. I hope someone's mind is blown. You don't have to offer lessons in the exact same way. And now you have three different products. Just so you know, this is a skill that's being used all over in e commerce with huge potential for a very long time. All right. So now that teachers have changed their role and can focus on more on tutorial type sessions, they can focus on the problems, potential solutions. They can really help students build reasoning and critical thinking. Let me give you a brief example.
Yes.
Let me give you a brief example. You have students who are so creative. They have recorded themselves, a loop of themselves, sitting down, pretending to pay attention. They hold the phone up to the screen using some type of device or holder, what have you. Yeah, they're telling you something. I don't necessarily want to sit down in a class and listen to you. I'd much rather I have you on my headphones and maybe I'm looking at the notes. They're telling us something. Could we be more efficient? All right.
Jelani, that makes me wonder, am I really here or is this just recording, When I smell a knot in my head, am I really here? That's
Hold on,
really a
hold on,
quick
hold on,
way
hold on.
to
Let
try
me
to
pinch
skip
you. Let me
classes.
reach up and pinch.
Yeah. How would you feel it? Right, but
All
I like the point you made about the changing of roles of educators, and I know some persons or like outside of the education system who may not understand the role of an educator fully, may say educators have more time on their hands now in the online environment to do what you say, nothing. But no, no, they're not doing nothing. They're actually now utilizing their time much better. They're no longer the sage on the stage, as they say, but they're now assisting learning. They're assisting the persons that would need that extra pedagogy support that are maybe behind in class, and they have more time to curate educational content that students can learn even better from. So the dynamics does change, the role does change, but it doesn't change for the worse. It changes for the better. So I love that point with the changing of roles, and I think our educators, for the most part, need to accept that and take a
oh. Uh-oh. Did we lose him? And he's back. And he's back.
I think we had a bit of interference there.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
all
I
right.
think
It
we did have a
happens.
bit of interference there, but that's all a part of technology.
You were saying you
So
were
we're
making a great point.
going to move on to. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can
Can
hear
we
you.
hear each other? Great. Right? And right now, we just have had an example of what actually happens within the classroom, where students drop out and
Exactly.
educators drop out. And we're going to speak to this later on, dealing with these challenges with technology and the importance of actually resilience building and dealing with the fear. So, well, we're not exempt for it as ITC professionals, aren't we? No? So let's
Not
move
at
on.
all. Not at all. Where do students want their lives to go? We're still talking about where do we want to go in education. Have we asked students? Have we really, really looked? For example, the trend right now in Barbados and in the Caribbean is a lot of game design. Who knew that you could get students into game design and coding, for example, by letting them know the same games that you play? Yeah, all of that is code. Did, did you know that? Well, this is how you can actually do it. It's actually quite cool. I know you have students bringing to life the things that they have seen or the things that they have in their imaginations. Awesome. In fact, given that the roles of students, of educators have or will change, have already changed, but will continue to change um, because of these digital tools, then it's fair to say that students' roles will also change. And if we're doing this efficiently, now both educators and students have time to do other things. For example, as it relates to students, it'll be great for students to compete more in science fairs, for example, compete more in different STEM competitions. You can learn coding, you can learn computer aided design, you can conduct your own experiments, focus on solving some real world problems. Guess what? Sure, I'm 14, but with the digital tools that I have learned, yeah, I'm going to try to solve this $1 billion problem. So what? It's great practice. It works. It's where I'm going to be. So I could as well start now. Even simple things like staying current with the news, right? If this is where students want to go, well, this is where we need to think of where we should be going as it relates to STEM and education. And because educators' roles have changed or will change to a more, or can change to a more tutorial type format, well, then now educators can help students focus on where they want their lives to go. That's one of my peeves. I really would like to help more persons take time. And when I say persons, I mean students. Think about where you want your life to go. Where could it go? What opportunities are out there? Because obviously, when you see that, now you have an idea, not just of what is possible, but what it might take, what you can do now. Yeah. And students also have more time for them to focus on it themselves. Um, Jonathan will love this. What
Yes,
is possible for students' futures?
yes, I might just about this part. And to the point you just made, teachers, you don't have to be afraid because a lot of our students already have the solutions built within them. They have the ideas, they have the motivation and the drive to get up and provide these solutions. So, as the natural leader within the classroom, it is just your responsibility to know how to manage this type of motivation or enthusiasm or innovation, and manage the other resources, not necessarily know have all the skills. So let your students explore, let your students be creative, let them speak up and talk, and let them create solutions that will benefit you in the future as well. So, yes, what is possible for our students in the future, Jelani? Because I love this part. Tell us.
So let's give an example of myself here. Sure, I have a background in engineering, but I'm a writer, right? I write articles. I'm an author. I love writing. Um, One thing I realized is before I wrote my first book, I've written for everyone else, but never for myself, never to produce a product, for example. But yet I've been doing it for everyone else, either paid or unpaid. So why not for myself? Yeah. I'm also a speaker. I speak to lots of professionals. I speak to lots of students, lots of educators as well, looking at potential careers for different persons. Yeah. So where do we want to go in STEM education? Well, we want students to understand that this is just a perspective that we want to share with them. We're not telling you you have to become a scientist. We're saying that you need to recognize you are not what you studied. You can study humanities today and study, I don't know, biology tomorrow. Doesn't matter. The fact is, you can apply the thought process. You can apply those abilities, those skills in other areas. So let's look at some specific careers. Biomedical engineering, very trending discipline. I love it. Now, let's think about it. Biomedical engineering. It actually blends natural sciences, engineering, as well as medicine. Now, let me give you an example here. I remember I once had a student who is interested in making prosthesis as a profession. And I myself, I wasn't really sure what that really was. But then I remembered um, biomedical engineering. I realized, hey, that really actually blends prosthetics and orthotics. Now, prosthetics or prosthesis, we're looking at a person has lost a limb or doesn't have a limb, was born without a limb, and so they need to have maybe a replacement, right? Something that they can use, um, or actually just have in public, right? And orthotics, you're focused on reinforcing or strengthening the body using some external type of device, right? Again, I'm sure neither the parent nor their daughter, their child, didn't know what frame of career this fell under. But guess what? Now they have an idea. Now they have an idea how they can actually blend those that profession together. With biomedical engineering, then they can even branch out into other areas. Um, you have computer science and software development. Right now, guess who's making money? Hold on a second. Knock, knock. There's something called a pandemic. Yeah? Have you heard of it? Who do you think is making what I like to call bank during this time? Who do you think? It's all those persons who are provided now for all of those commercial entities who now want to jump into e-commerce. Surprise, surprise. They're very in demand and they're making some of the best money that you've ever seen in your life. Now, on the flip side of that, there's some persons that got sent home. But again, now we're seeing the trend. All right. We have an idea of where the world is going. You have digital marketing, social media management. These were not professions that were available before social media, not typically. All right. Then we have the gig economy professionals. I mentioned this. You are now location independent. Okay. We're talking about remote workers, persons who work from home, entrepreneurship. Why do I mention entrepreneurship as someplace where we want to go as it relates to STEM and education? Why? Well, I mentioned this actually way earlier in this presentation. When you think about it, what do STEM professionals do? STEM professionals focus on solving problems. They are and will continue to be the innovators and job creators. Elon Musk may not think of himself as an engineer, but guess what? I'm sure a university will confer an honorary doctorate. He's proven, yep, here are some engineering principles. This is how you do it. And he's done it across multiple disciplines.
Yes, and I just a note here. I think we've mentioned it at the top of the hour, and even in our pre-show discussions, Jelani, and you've said it correctly. So that STEM really should be a way of thinking. It doesn't replace the blended learning environment, but it helps complement that with that inquiry-based learning. And if we can get back at that comment by Miss Burton, I believe, where she said that education needs really to be reevaluated. And yes, she's exactly right. And through this STEM and even the blended learning environment, using these approaches can help
Exactly.
our teachers to reevaluate that, the learning within schools and how that is conducted, so we can actually be targeting or touching each learning style, so that no child is actually left behind. So don't see STEM as a separate approach. It is a part of these other learning approaches, but it promotes or encourages that project-based or inquiry-based learning as well. Just to note that. So we're moving on to a very important point: is how do we actually get there? Where do our thinking actually needs to be?
So, of course, in order to get where we want to go, now that we have an idea based on where we've seen everyone else go, we can now create a plan. Okay, so we want to get there using STEM, STEAM, and STREAM. All right, we know that. Okay, also, now you'll notice that you see some different colors. That just means these things are grouped together. So we want to build creativity, imagination, and design process. All right. And we can actually do these things again within the STEM, STEAM, and STREAM, within the education by sharing that perspective of how to think, how to see things, how to see different things as opportunity. So let's go on to robotics and programming. Again, this brings into focus different areas which can engage different learning styles, even different teaching styles. Teachers now have have different ways to teach all different aspects of curriculum. We have coding. Remember I mentioned game design? Now imagine you can teach coding through game design. Okay? Imagine you can teach other areas through game design. For example, storyboarding, showing how to put something together, how to put a presentation like this together. Yeah, all of that's involved in game design, for example. Now, what about hands-on learning and testing? Again, very useful. Different different learning styles engaged there, and also you get persons to do a lot more hands-on type work where they can actually go out into the world and say, well, yes, I have tried this. Maybe it didn't work. That's okay. Employers still like to know that you tried something. Get it? Remember, for many persons here or maybe my age, or within my generation, one of the main problems is a lot of us did not have real world experience. But again, if that's where the world wants us to be, well, then maybe we need to think about implementing that, right? Again, through STEM and education. And then we have real world problem solving and inquiry based testing. Well, all right. So I'm walking along, I see something, and I'm seeing it every day as a problem. Huh, okay. Do I just say to myself, okay, that's somebody else's problem. I'm a kid. Who cares? But that's not what we're really trying to cultivate, is it? That's not what any type of company wants. They want someone who says, huh, hmm, what could I do here? Again, think of that 14-year-old, even though they are 14. What makes me think that I could not solve this problem? Yeah, what makes me think that I could not put a team together of other 14-year-olds or even adults and say, look, let's devise a way to solve this problem, and let's see if someone is crazy enough to give us a couple millions, to actually implement that prototype. Now imagine, now think about this. Imagine going for a job interview, having failed at something like that. Different perspective, isn't it? Very different. All right. So communication and teamwork and project-based learning and testing. And these are fairly simple and self-explanatory. We want people to be able to communicate. I've found with students, there's some students who, once they get to know you, they can articulate themselves, more or less. But when we go there in the world, it's important that you can communicate immediately, straight off the bat. Also, because people want to hear what you have to say, but also because you need to say something. Because if you don't say something, no one is going to pay attention because there are many other persons who are willing to say something. Loudmouth people like me, for example, are willing to say something, even if you don't. So, try to get in there. It's important. All right. And project based learning and testing. Well, it makes sense to me. Every day of my life, in my professional life, I've worked on projects. So it kind of baffles me sometimes then that this is not the focus, and this has not been the focus, given the fact that this is where companies are professionally and commercially. And remember, this learning curve does not need to be steep. In getting there, it doesn't need to be a case of we need to spend billions of dollars in teacher training. Nope. It can start with, for example, myself and Jonathan doing a little presentation like this because we recognize that educators recognize their tools out there. They may not have time to jump into them themselves. But you know what? Hey, once a week or maybe 15 minutes a day, just like I tell my students on their end, yeah, and you can get it done. It's quite possible, right?
Yes,
It can be gradual.
yes, and you're absolutely correct. And this is what I tell my educators as well. I let them know that, hey, you're not alone. This learning curve may be steep. You may have a short time to achieve these objectives, but you're not alone. And a part of the support group that we built is with the GEG Caribbean and the GEG Barbados group. And GEG stands for Google Educator Group. And this support group, you can ask any questions you want or any tools. We want ITC professionals and educators to be a part of this group. We want all persons of all subject areas to be a part of this group. So if you have a problem with a tool, a problem with a method of delivery, if you have content that you want to share, feel free to share on this group. And both those groups interact with each other. Now, GEG is not just a local initiative or a regional initiative. It is an initiative that is worldwide. It is not attached to Google, but it's a volunteer group that professionals engage in for pedagogy support. And there are GEG global groups, there are GEG virtual groups all over the world with thousands of people. I'm a part of some of them. Some of you may be a part of them as well. There are GEG groups for in Europe and USA. You just need to type it in GEG in Facebook or Instagram, and they will come up, even in South Korea. So you would want to be a part of this support group and join this journey with us because you're not alone and we're here to help each other. And we'll be happy to assist wherever we can. So just ask your question and that's it. So the links are will be posted in the comment section. And I believe they're all up right now for the GEG Barbados and GEG Facebook Caribbean group. And if you're in your own country and you want to start your own GEG page, feel free to do that. And we can link up with the GEG Caribbean group if you're in the Caribbean region. So we can all have that, regional collaboration as well. So contact your GEG group and get that support that is much needed for our educators, for our professional ITC professionals, and for our parents and students in many cases. Yeah, so this part of the program is a big, 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 big topic for many people, and it's sometimes where people stop with STEM education, and that is the roadblocks, the fear of whatever it is. They just have fear. Um, that will prohibit them from actually going forward. So we're going to talk about that some more. I just want to hear Jelani's comments on the first topic, the first point there.
So you find when it comes to fear, um, you find educators can be fearful of changing current teaching styles. You get so comfortable with something. And so they're fearful of changing the styles and implementing new strategies. These things take time, they take effort. It's like you are steering a giant cruise ship. I mean, not that they're going anywhere anyhow, joke at that. But in all seriousness, imagine trying to change course. Yeah, it can be difficult, and it takes time. That's why we mentioned the learning curve can be gradual. It doesn't need to be steep. Also, even fear of other educators around you, um, or even the institution you work with, that they might not like your changes or even resist them because you decided to make a change and stand out. But again, gradual steps, gradual steps. Okay, it doesn't mean that you cannot go above and beyond, like many teachers I know have been doing for a long time. I know educators typically do this, so I'm not worried about that. But you can go above and beyond and do some soft testing in your classroom to see if, for example, some of the tools that we share could be useful. And then there's
Yeah.
time. Go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry.
On that same topic of fear, John, I just have to give you my experience as well. Because when I'm dealing with educators, sometimes they are so shaken. They know what to do, but they just need someone to be there to assist them, right? And what are they afraid of? They are afraid of failure. Failure is a big thing. How will I look? What will other person say about me? How will I look in front of my students? But that is why resilience building is important when you're approaching teacher professional or capacity building exercises. How to build resilience in our teachers. And that is why also at the top of the hour, we said that the same pedagogy support that is needed for our students is also needed for our teacher because they go through some of the same problems that our challenges that our students go through when it comes to learning, and one of them being fear. I've written a nice little quote about this, and it says here that system integrity does not lie within the functionality and the design, but in how well it gracefully recovers when faced with errors, right? So we also need to build that resilience as well, so we can gracefully recover and be that example to our students, to our children, to our co-workers and everyone. So know that fear is inevitable at times, but we can overcome it. Yes.
So, I believe we're all mature adults here, mature enough to recognize that sometimes one of the roadblocks we can have is time. We are so busy with our own lives. We're busy with our partners. We're busy with our children. We're busy with our jobs. Like life. Sometimes life can feel like it's happening to us, and so then sometimes it can be difficult to find time to study, to research, study, and implement these tools. Yeah, as one of the roadblocks. It can also be difficult to find, or it could be difficult to find appropriate tools, especially if you're not sure what you're looking for. This is the whole reason for the presentation. We want to help you jump in. We're guiding you. So it's kind of like a supervisor once told me years ago. Jelani, I mean, this was a remote conversation. He was on the other side of the computer. He wasn't in the same room as me. He said, Jelani, right now, that pressure you feel, where I'm helping you to get this done, is my hand in the small of your back and my other hand holding yours, guiding you to where I want you to go, and where I know you can be, and where you need to go in order to complete this project. Now, that's important, extremely important, because like it can take time to find the appropriate tools, but again, it doesn't need to be a rush. But if you just do it a little bit of time every day, right? One of the other roadblocks could be cost and funding as it relates to implementing these tools. So you found a tool, but maybe it has a high cost attached to it. Does that mean that it's the only tool out there that you can use? Uh-uh. There's lots of different tools out there, okay, for different budgets, for different learning styles, for different teaching styles. So you have a nice mix that you can use when it comes to implementing STEM in education. All right. So you don't have to be fearful if you find something that's not budget friendly. Okay. You remember, we're really looking at what is feasible for you. That's it. That's it. All right. Now,
Yes,
mhm,
yes, it is. Yeah, and there are much ways that you can access funding. And I know for those persons who this being the biggest stumbling block for them when it comes to ICT initiatives, you can engage in PTA events for with fundraising, or ask parents to donate towards a project that you may have, and that way you can get funding. It's small donation and it may not cover everything, but it's part of the donation. And once others see that initiative, then they'll be willing to assist because you've already started a journey and you show that you're interested in making this work for your students. Other types of funding for those ambitious projects, you can apply for grant funding. Um, and it doesn't have to be, one, you know, agency to which you apply for this grant funding for. You can ask for a counterpart funding to just spread the burden across these different development agencies, and they're willing to, invest in these projects. They want the educators within the schools who know this, who have the solution in mind. You are the lead users within the school. You have the solution. You know the environment. You know what works and what cannot work. So when you come a step forward with these ideas, then they are willing and they are ready to assist and fund these projects. It just takes, in a lot of cases, you just stepping up and applying for it, right? And a lot of them are looking for persons like you. So funding is accessible, but there needs to be creative ways in how you approach funding, and not just asking for funding from from the school district or the school board, which already have a very tight budget. So I would encourage you to please explore your options of funding, and there are probably other funding methods that we can't mention right now that are out there for you to explore.
and we are not going to just um, leave you, just holding the bag. We're actually going to give you an idea, some creative ways. So, creative ways of finding some funding. Okay, you don't need to look very far, except in the newspaper, to see lots of articles of organizations, both charitable and otherwise, um, who have donated lots of electronic devices or even food during this pandemic, yeah, to persons in need. If it's one thing we've also recognized from the pandemic, that there's a lot of disenfranchisement in our communities, in our countries. Some persons don't have internet, some persons don't have cell phones, they don't have tablets, they don't have laptops, some people don't have electricity, just so you know. Yeah. But yet, a lot of persons still stepped up. A lot of organizations still stepped up and donated. Private companies, they provided lots of donations, grants, and sponsorship. Yeah. Jonathan mentioned support from parents. Um, you have some institutions. For example, even foreign support. Did you know that the embassies in your country are there for that purpose? They're actually there to help give out a little money for various areas. Yeah. So, I mean, we have the Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank. Some of these places are geared towards some loans, but then you also have some grants in between. You have the delegation of the European Union, for example, the UNDP, and a lot of other locally based institutions as well.
And if you want to be even more ambitious, you can apply for places like Microsoft. They also have a branch that also fund educational projects, and even Google. There's the Carolina Foundation that you can also apply for. And locally, again, there's the Sandy Lane Charitable Trust and the Maria Holder Trust, just name a few. And I don't think you had mentioned the UN, and some of the departments
No,
do
you're right.
education funding, and IDB. I think you had mentioned CDB. So there are probably a laundry list of
Oh yeah,
agencies that you can actually
oh yeah, oh
approach
yeah,
with
oh yeah.
funding. So you have options to play with. And I wanted to tell you that deferred does not mean denied. Even if you are not granted the funding at this time, it doesn't mean that there's something gravely wrong with the project. You may just need to rework the financing, make sure you have a better project plan that they can actually see clearly what it is you're trying to achieve. So this also, yes, is a part of resilience building. And when it doesn't work with the first time, keep trying, because as I said, what works for your students and what doesn't work. So keep trying.
That's right. I think the final point here on STEM roadblocks is, you know, we're all fairly mature enough to know that, when it comes to certain areas, for example, education versus athletics, and sporting activities, yeah, that there are other activities that we have to compete with for funding. it's a known, it's a norm. Yeah. And in fact, some of these other activities are what actually bring persons to the school and help get us some of that funding, especially for areas across the world. So, we're mature enough to recognize that, and that's why we provided some other options, because we understand how the competition is as it relates to competing for funding, for example. Yeah. All right. I think this is Jonathan's favorite part now. So I'm going to let him introduce it. I think he's
I
mute.
said my mic is muted or there. I fell into it. I remember you
2020
said
coming again.
that. Yes, yes. The most used quote for 2020. You are on mute, and I guess I got caught in it just now. Yeah. So we have some information to share with you. We can go to the next slide.
Oh,
Just
sure.
waiting for that to come up. Yeah, so we have some sample projects, lessons that we would are excited to share with you. So we did consider that, some of you are working with a very little budget or no budget at all. So we took all of that into consideration when developing these projects. And the first one here is mainly for the primary school level, but you can use it at the secondary school level. It has great potential. And it is taken from the national curriculum of the MOE, Ministry of Education for Barbados, and on the topic living things and energy. All right, so let's start learning about what this is all about. So the aim here is to measure light and energy received by flowering plants. And the objectives, as you can see, is to collect this data, do some recording, display, and analysis. And two tools that we are using here are the Google Science Journal app and the an augmented reality tool called Google Expedition. Now, if we can get those tools up, because I want you to see what the Expedition app looks like before we go ahead. If you can just put that over the presentation, and then this is the Google Science Journal app, and then we can also view the yes, the Google Expedition app. So you know what it actually looks like when you go searching, you can find it. And so I am an educator. Let's propose a science educator. And you are teaching on the topic of photosynthesis, right? In a blended and online environment. And this online environment, which is what we're currently in right now, you're at home, your students are at home as well. So you want to teach using an online tool that can facilitate, learning and interactive learning online. Well, you can go and you can use the Google Expeditions app. Just let me explain for those who may not be, familiar with photosynthesis. The photosynthesis is the process by which green plants and some organizations use sunlight to synthesize foods from carbon dioxide and water, right? And we know that some plants are house plants and then other plants are outside plants. So if you leave an outside plant outside in the sun too long, it would receive too much sunlight, and that can cause the plant to actually die, wither and die. And then if you in the opposite direction, if you put a outside plant inside the house and it does not receive enough sunlight, then that plant could also die as well because it is not providing adequate sunlight. So a way to solve this or to actually have data on the measurements of how much sunlight this plant actually needs is using the Google Science Journal app, where we can actually record the amount of sunlight that is emitted within the classroom to determine whether at that location in the classroom, this plant is receiving adequate sunlight, it being a house plant or it being an outside plant. I think we have some demonstrations here. Let's put up the augmented reality tool first so we can give them a little tour of what it's actually about. All right, so this is the Google Expeditions augmented reality tour and app. And I'm going to type in here photosynthesis, and it's going to give me a list of tours. I know some of these tours are VR and AR tours, and VR stands for virtual reality, and AR stands for augmented reality. So VR stands for virtual reality, and and AR stands for augmented reality. And augmented reality is like a mixture of our world and the virtual world together. So let's start this VR tour, how photosynthesis works. So here is the first stop on the tour, and it's talking about the sun and the sun being the source of light and energy. And students can interact with this and move it around and turn it upside down. Um, I'm not going to go through the whole guide, but I'm just going to stop at certain points. Here's a demonstration of the plant image, and as I said, they can interact with it, look around it as you give example or instruct them. And there are notes at the bottom, right there. Yes, there are notes giving a little description, to help guide you or help give fun facts about the actual object that's on the screen. Now, these images may not fit the exact lesson plan you have in mind, but they're still useful. Neither are the notes, but they're still useful. I would advise you to pre-read them before your class so that you will know exactly what you want to use. And you can use more than one tour to achieve the actual lesson objectives. This one is a virtual reality tour, and it is going to take students into the virtual world. Of course, you will need the VR glasses to actually take full advantage of this experience. I can imagine students being over the moon about this,
Hmm.
right? So just imagine this, seeing this, the plant, the process of photosynthesis, and the sun. It brings a whole new meaning to learning, an interactive meaning to learning, and helps them to be more engaged within the learning. So much so that they may want to pursue it after class. Learning more about photosynthesis. Now they have that physical or visual demonstration in front of them that they can actually touch and interact with. Isn't that cool? So yes, I'm seeing someone ask if both apps are free. They are free, free, free,
That's right.
free. Did I say free?
Right.
They are free.
Right.
Yes.
We know our
And if
market very well.
yes. So we are if you can get back at the presentation. So we are, yes, they are free. I can't emphasize that enough. They are free. And you all you need is your phone. Believe it, it is so simple. All you need is your phone. Of course, you're not going to leave your phone outside in the sun all day, but you can measure the data at various points in time. Now let's move on to the second part of this lesson, with the second video, I believe. So we're going to demonstrate the Google Science Journal app. Right. And here I have my two experiment folders here. One is for photosynthesis and the other one is for classroom lighting. Now, this is where I can write my observation. If I click on the Explorers icon, which I just did, and it started to measure the light within the room that I'm in. And I'm moving around the bedroom. Well, I'm in my bedroom. Just trying to pick up where which part of this room actually receive the most light. And you're saying the LUX. I just want to let you know that lux, I have it here. Lux refers to the light falling on an area or illuminating a subject, right? And where you see lumens on some device refers to the amount of output from a device. So you're capturing the light that's falling on an object, and that object being the plant. And I am moving around this room and seeing, which part of the area in this room is actually receiving the most light. And I can go online and do my research and find out how much lux this plant or light this plant should be receiving. And there, I will know where to place my plant strategically in the classroom or in this room. Yes. So this other one, I think this is demonstration two. The second demonstration, or the second way you can use these tools, is actually solving simple problems within the classroom. Sometimes our classrooms are not well lit. And I have a little note here. It says, classroom needs good lighting in order to facilitate learning. From a practical standpoint, there needs to be enough of and the right kind of light to perform the function of a school. Light has been shown to improve morale and increase productivity in workplaces. This is true. Lighting is a dominant factor in the brain's ability to focus. Studies have shown that learners in brightly lit environments got higher grades than those in dimly lit classrooms. And full spectrum lighting, which is natural light, works best to improve behavior, create less anxiety and stress, and improve overall health. So yes, 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 yes. You can solve simple problems within your classroom, educators. Sometimes students may not be able to see the board from a particular angle of the classroom. And you may be wondering, why is the student far behind? It may be the light at a certain time of day. It is giving them a headache. Maybe they can't see because of the glare on the board. You can use this data to rearrange your classroom to have a more productive learning environment. And this has potential for the future, believe it. Now, imagine our young architects within the classroom, right? Having exposed to these tools. They can now start reading and having measurements at home. And the way this is used in architecture's career, um, it is in the amount of light that is required to lit an office. When you have to deal with like hundreds of bulbs, you have to appropriately place these lights in the appropriate places to make sure the office is well lit for a productive work environment. And this is an important role of the architecture when designing the building, how well it should be lit. When purchasing hundreds and hundreds of light fixtures. So you see the potential it has for the future? Yes. So I would advise you to expose your students to these tools. And I'm just going to slip in this. This was not a part of this presentation, but Google Science Journal have a whole host of sensors that can be attached and other sensors that you can use within your phone. Like you can measure pitch, you can measure sound. I know you music teachers are getting excited there now. You can use the accelerometer, you can simulate earthquakes. Don't let me continue. I don't want to get you too excited. I know Jelani is also excited about this tool.
Oh yeah.
And we recently found out that Google have outsourced this tool. Like, give us the name, Jelani. Tell us. Google have
Yeah,
recently
so
outsourced this tool.
Google, they're calling it a graduation, that the Google Science Journal is going to graduate to Arduino. Now, when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, yep, yep, I'm there. Because it means then that a lot of the microcontrollers that I use for my students at the various levels, now I can start to attach sensors to the controller, which I can then use with Google Science Journal. So they can record all the experiments in one single app, everything in one. It works perfectly.
Yes.
Jonathan, I'm going to ask you a brief question, right? Suppose I take my Science Journal app, okay, which I can use to, sense sound, put it in a classroom with students. And as a teacher, if I leave that classroom, I can say, now, students, I've asked you to be quiet. If I come back and I replay this and I hear that you've made noise, well, everybody's in trouble. You think that
Yeah.
could do a little classroom management? I thought about
Yeah,
it.
it does. That's a really good idea because that's a good point. I'm glad you bring that up because you can actually record the data. Yes, you can, and you can export it to Excel. You can export it of the app to whichever source you want to export it to. But you can record the data and make notes. So if you want to, measure this, the sound intensity within your classroom, whether your students are actually being quiet, you don't have to tell them anything. Just leave and come back and say, "Aha, you were not quiet."
Got you.
Yes.
So, so okay. So we wanted to make this inclusive for all levels. So I'm going to go through the secondary and the tertiary levels, right? Since those are the levels that I mainly deal with. Now, our sample lesson is going to be different. Okay. Now, this is something that occurred with a colleague of mine at his home. Now, my colleague lives in, in a very rural area, and it's a kind of hilly, well, if you can say Barbados has hills, but a fairly hilly area. And he has a water tank at his, and a water tank set up with a pump and so on, right? And a generator to run the pump anytime they need water from that tank. And the challenge that or the problem that occurred was someone in the home actually left one of the taps on at night. And by the next morning, a lot of the water was out of the tank. It still had a little, but most of it was gone. And immediately, again, because of our backgrounds, he's an engineer like myself. And no, he's civil. He is civil. Get it? No connection, no real connection there. But yet, he still said, Jelani, I was thinking of how we could solve this problem here because it is a problem. And again, now you see why STEM education is so important because you have, you know, everyone who has that mindset, not just thinking, okay, well, yeah, that's a problem, but that's not my problem. Who cares? No, right? He looks at it as something to solve. And so I decided, hey, let's bring this problem to the forefront because I'm sure this has happened with other persons, right? Water leaking from your water tanks. All right, so let's look at it at a secondary level. At a at the secondary school level, what we're looking at some subjects like physics, industrial technology. Now, industrial technology can actually be broken down into electrical and electronic engineering technology and a few other areas. Yeah, and the reason why we're going to look at these or use these particular topics as it relates to this lesson is because of what we're going to be doing. All we want to do is measure the water tank levels. That's it. We just want to do one thing. Nothing too difficult, one thing. But let's look at how we're going to do it. Well, we're going to do some data collection. We're going to record this just like with the primary schools. Yeah, we're just doing it now at a higher level, and we're going to analyze it. And we're also going to implement some robotics and sensors, electronics, okay, rather than using, let's say, manual water level checks. Because guess what? Someone could go every day and check that water level. But do you have to? Is there another way? And we want that thinking to start at the secondary level. Okay? All right. So now Jonathan went through Google Science Journal. So I don't have to go through that anymore, but you have an idea. And remember, we just mentioned, or rather, he asked me to share it. Remember, we just talked about the fact that I can now take my microcontroller, I can take robotics, and I can add sensors to my controller and then connect it to my water tank. Hold on. Wait a second. So forget about field trips now in school. You can go, because I know most schools have a water tanks, if not all. I've seen them. So you said, well, students, you push back your desk, or rather your chair, and you say, you know what? We're going on a field trip at school. And I'm going to show you this water tank. So suppose you guys leave on the tap. How will we ensure that the water levels don't dip below a certain point? Well, now using our water level sensor, for example, or any number of sensors, because there are different sensors that we could use, now we can say, oh, well, the water level has dropped to this amount, or it's full up to this amount. We now have an idea. All right, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. I'm going to click on something here. Now, this is a video that I created because it's not only Science Journal. Science Journal is, at least on a secondary school level, you can use it for a number of things. You can attach a number of sensors, but like Jonathan said, or actually maybe he didn't go deep enough into it. So I get to, which is perfect. You can use it as your own personal laboratory book. So you see all those laboratory graph books that y'all had to, cart around, and yeah, they're gone. They're dead. They're obsolete, which is brilliant. You can now record it all in the app. Now, if the teachers want, they could make you. I'm not saying they can't. They could make you have to draw the graphs by hand, in which case I'm so glad to pass that level. I don't have to do that. I can just use the app. But but you can actually record everything within the app. So within your app, like Jonathan may have showed you a bit of it, you can actually take pictures. So you can take a picture of the water tank and say, well, this is the water tank that we have. You can then make a note. Okay, this water tank is a 1,000-gallon tank. All right, where is the water tank? Okay, how is it positioned? All right, okay, all of these things you can observe. Now, let's look at another tool, a little bit different. Now remember, we're still using the Google Science Journal for recording information, for making observations. All right, so let's go to this next tool here called AR Ruler. Now, Jonathan briefly mentioned augmented reality. Now, this is actually pretty cool. And this is a little video that I recorded. I'm going to let it play. So just give me a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm actually going to transfer this so that our admin can actually see this. All right, so just give it a second. And let me share my screen. And here we go. All right, so there you go. So I'm going to let this play. If anyone can't hear, please be kind enough to let us know so that we're not playing a completely mute video here, all right? Just let us know. Uh-oh. 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 It's threatening to stop me. It's threatening to stop me. It's threatening to stop me. Okay, let's hold on. Let's try again. So let's link out and let's try again. Sometimes you have to be patient with the technology. It gets you upset. You want to throw a fit. Yeah. All right, so let's go back in. So let's pause. Let's let it load up a little bit. Let me share my screen. And all right, share screen. Let me click share audio. And let's go again. All right, so you should be able to see it there and hear the audio.
First thing it asks.
So here we go.
Hi everyone, Jelani here, and we're going to do a very brief walkthrough of a really great tool and resource for STEM in education, and it's called AR Measure. Now, don't spend too much time on the app name AR Measure. Focus on the tool and resource that it can be used as, which is as an AR ruler. That means you can actually measure something using your phone. So you can measure or use your phone as a ruler. All right, so let's go to the app. Well, here it is in that second row in the last column, AR Measure. Okay, and I can tap on it and it comes up. And the first thing it asks is to move my phone around, in order to detect the surface. And you see some white, well, a type of white grid, but you're also going to see some blue dots coming up, some small blue dots, which are just kind of mapping the surface. All right, and now it asks me to tap the start point on the surface. So let's tap a point here. That's not the point I want. Let's get in closer. All right, let's go again. Because we want to get as close to the edge as possible. All right, that's perfect. And now come down, we want to do the bottom edge of the book. Now that says about 23 centimeters, all right? And if I were to bring my ruler into the picture, it's going to be a little blurry, so I'm going to read it for you. And I were to look, I'm actually going to see that this book is approximately 23 centimeters long, okay? Now, or rather in height. Depends on how you want to look at it, right? Okay, so we can actually try a different book altogether. So let's try this next book. It's a bit bigger, Math Word Problems.
All right, so I'm going to pause it there because I actually showed two books, but we don't need to. Now I'm going to stop this and I'm going to go back to my original screen because I want you guys to really understand the potential for the tools that we're sharing with you right now. Okay? All right, so back to my main presentation screen here. Now that's AR ruler. Now that's an augmented reality ruler. Now get this. Let's look at Jonathan briefly for a second. Jonathan, how do you think a teacher could use that when they're measuring the plant? Don't have to walk with a ruler anymore. Don't have to walk with any type of a cumbersome tool. Works well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it works well, especially in mathematics where you're measuring objects or spaces, you're calculating anything within that area. It works well. I'm actually thinking of creative ways we can actually use that. So I may need some more time to think about it, but this is actually really nice. I'm excited, low-key in my head
All
about
right.
it.
So now, as it
Yes.
relates to your water tank problem, now you have another tool in your arsenal, so you can actually measure, for example, the circumference of the base of the water tank. Okay, so let's say you want to put a sensor under there, right? A weight sensor. Let's say you want to put another sensor. Okay, a different type of sensor. Let's say you didn't want to put anything in the tank, but yet still be able to somehow calculate calculate the volume of water in the tank, or maybe that or the volume of air. Because again, this is the whole point. Do we need to calculate the volume of the water that is in there, or do we need to calculate the volume of air that is in there? It could be one, it could be the other, it could be both. Either way, you now have an idea of how much volume of water is in that tank. Get it? Okay. So you can literally, for example, you could have a small camera. And yes, these do exist. A small camera connected to a microcontroller. I've messed with them before. I love them. And now you could have something that's transmitting information. You can have it transmit information to a screen. Okay. All right. We spent a little time on that. And I mean, I already mentioned robotics within there. We talked about the sensors, the controllers, and the components. But let's say we wanted to maybe create something specifically for that tank at the school in order to house our electronics, for example. Yeah. Or maybe even house our sensor. Yeah. Again, simply using something like this. It is a great free tool. All I use is my Gmail account and I sign in. This is Tinkercad. Now, Jonathan, I remember Jonathan and I were having a conversation, and he was saying, this would be really nice to create, 3D objects and then print them on a 3D
Yeah.
printer. I had a laugh. My students and I did that last year, and it was awesome. I had students asking
Yes, and it
me on
really
Saturdays.
gets. And just to connect what we were talking about first with the STEAM or STREAM acronym, it really connects the A and the art because you're not indulging in the design, creating and building these things. You can create robotics and you don't need to buy the robotic kits anymore. You can create your objects, you can add your circuits and your coding, and you can go from there. You can have that full experience with these 3D printing tools. So I strongly encourage you to explore these tools.
Here are some of the designs that I would have created with students. But imagine now you have a student that you can create something in 3D space that you can actually use to hold your controller. And for example, like Jonathan said, you don't have to keep your phone out there. If you did want to keep a cheap phone out there, a cheap, operative word cheap, you could do that. It's quite okay, right? Or maybe another type of device that can transmit information, not a problem. Let's say it's an LCD screen. Okay, think of a phone case, right? A phone case, make it a little smaller and it can hold an LCD screen. And again, you can connect it to your controller. So yes, someone still does have to come there every day and look at the water level, right? But now they're doing it digitally. They don't have to look in, they don't have to get a stick. I did I tell you that that's when I was working at one company to measure the oil, I couldn't believe it. It was hilarious, but it makes sense. We used to have to get a stick, put it in the container and measure the level, right? But guess what? Now we can teach students, yeah, you don't have to do that. There are other ways to do that. All right. So now, but this isn't the only thing you can do with Tinkercad. That's just what you can do using 3D design. Let's look at circuits. Now, forgive me. I've worked a lot on this, and a lot of students have spent a lot of time on my computer. So a lot of these stuff here are things that they would have made, they would have created. Um, and you can actually come here and you can create circuits. So, for example, this is a circuit here of a walking robot, right? Now, which we made what with some sensors as well as some servo motors and so on. Now, here is what is very, 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 very cool about this. You see, whatever you need to do for that project where you have to measure the water levels and you want to add sensors, you have Google Science Journal, which you can use to observe. You can make notes, you can take pictures, connect that with the sensors, right? The robotics. And you can actually come here and you can prototype the type of circuits that you want within the type of the type of device that you decide you want to create. Okay, and then of course to top it all off, you can create a nice 3D design that you see here. Okay, and we've done a lot of prototyping here. For example, this is one. And you can literally come here and you can make something in 3D space, all right, to house everything that you want. All right, but let's not harp on that, okay? Let's not stay there. So I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to stop sharing this part of the screen. I'm going to come out of this, and I'm going to go back to my main screen. Because we're going to end off on this last part of the presentation. Now here you have the tertiary level. Now, do I really need to give you any more tools for this tertiary level? I don't think so. Because we're doing the same thing here at the tertiary level, except this would be, for example, for engineering students, right? It's no longer going to be for just physics students, but you can see how, well, let me just go back so that you have an idea. You can imagine how physics students, industrial technology students can get involved using all of those applications. And remember, Jonathan was using these applications before me. So you can use this at the primary and secondary levels. And now I'm going to show you at the tertiary level. And we don't even have to stick too long on the tertiary level. Why? Because at the tertiary level, it's important to do things like this. You need to be using the technology. That's your field. Behave as though you're already in it. Extremely important, except we're going more advanced. Now we want to measure and control the water tank levels. So we're doing the same things: data collection, recording, display, analysis, but now we're communicating with devices, for example, over Bluetooth, for example, wirelessly. Works really great using robotics. So now we want to measure and control water tank levels. So you see the pump that he had, right? So let's try to remember here. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up very briefly. Let me go back to the water tank here so you guys can see it. Remember, you didn't just have the water tank alone, but you had the pump. So for the advanced level, for tertiary students, they can actually use the exact same apps, okay, to prototype, to create something, to develop something that you can then use to control the amount of water that goes into that tank and the amount of water that leaves that tank. And not only that, you can actually see it in real time. In real time. Kind of sounds like something that you might want to enter for a competition, but I won't say anymore. I'll stop. I'll stop. I'll stop there. So you guys have a really good idea of what we're showing you and how it can be used. And notice, we're still talking about tertiary, and I haven't added any more tools. All we've changed is the complexity, right? The advanced level. But that's it. That's it. So I'm going to pass over to Jonathan for a little bit here so he can kind of briefly make some points.
Yeah, we went through a lot of great tools here today, Jelani. I really enjoyed watching the presentation, and I'm over the moon about these ideas. And that last demonstration that you made, I know that also well. I live in St. John. They have two water tanks. Sometimes someone may get up in the morning and they may leave the water tank on, and all of the water went back into the system, and that is very painful. So that solution is very much needed. And maybe they have built some before us in place else, but it doesn't mean that we can't create our own as well. It is great to have that type of experience and to come up with those solutions for our own problems. So I would implore you once again to please explore these tools. Explore these tools. So those are my final words on that summary. I think we're coming right now to our Q&A, or you may have some key points that you may want to share. So just get your fingers ready. We'll be happy to take your questions. You can direct them at Jelani or myself. You'll let me know, Jelani, if you're ready for the questions now, or if you have some more points to make.
So what I'll do is I'll very quickly make the points so that we can do Q&A, give persons some time to ask some questions, because it seems like they're going to be good.
Yeah.
So there's a really good reason why I put these pictures here to show you guys. In summary, the trend here, where everything is going, is STEM. It's not that we're talking about STEM professions only, but we're also talking about um, the way people think, the creativity, the art, the robotics, everything coming together, working together where the technology is going and being implemented. So it makes sense, like we shared all through the presentation, that you should try as far as possible to follow the trend. This will allow you to stay prepared for what is to come. And I mean, I'm not saying that you have to, but I'm saying you really can't afford to not follow the trend. It really won't make sense for you. Given what is happening, it really won't make sense. Let's look at the pandemic and what has happened. In fact, someone was just discussing with me recently. If we look at ideally those persons who have had to uh, go home from their jobs, guess what? It's not the persons who are technologically savvy. It's not those persons who are into trending careers and professions. It's not those persons. It is those persons who do tasks that could, for example, be replaced by robots. It has already started. We know this. I walked into a fast food restaurant, right? Just to show you this. They used to have someone spraying hands. That is now replaced by an automatic dispenser. Guess what it dispenses? Hand sanitizer. See what happened there? Yeah. Now that person, they've been doing more than one job within that institution, but it gives you a kind of idea of what is to come. So that's why I showed these pictures here. Now these are things my students are doing. I'm not going to go into them, but you can just kind of look. You can get a quick idea. Now if students are doing things like these, right? If students are doing things like these, you can imagine where the world is going, what the world is actually working on. All right. So let's finish up here with some action items, okay? And there are just four of them. One, educators, look at the tools that you have in your arsenal. And these are the traditional tools. We're not biased. Look at the traditional tools. What did you use previously? Choose one that you might have said, you know what? Shucks, I see it actually being updated. I see something else going on. Let me see what else is out there. Let me try changing that one. Or it might be one that you just hate to do, but you've been comfortable doing it all these years because you didn't have a choice. Maybe you want to choose to change it now or try. So then you can then research new STEM tools, right? Associated with that particular traditional tool that you used to use. And then you can decide, all right, I want to make a soft introduction to my students with this. Oops, we're moving forward. I want to make a soft introduction to my students with this tool, even to other teachers, even to the institution that I work with. Also, look at the tools that Jonathan and I shared with you. Most of them from your phone, most of them from things that you already have around you in your environment. Look around you. What can you use? What do you already have that you can use? Remember, it's about you and your students. It's not only about, the fact that something might be expensive. There's probably someone else who's smart enough to realize, I really don't want to pay 300 US dollars for this, so that's going to be a hard no. Let me see what else is out there. Again, follow them, follow that trend. Why not? Right? And finally, review the tools that Jonathan and I shared here today, the Google Science Journal, the Google Expeditions with the AR tools. AR Ruler should also be here, but again, that's an augmented reality tool. And Tinkercad, right? Really, really useful tools that you can use. And I'm just going to end off here. You can contact me, Jelani Payne, at Jelani Payne on Instagram or on LinkedIn. You have my email, jelanipayne@gmail.com, or my business email, which is robotadventursltd@gmail.com. Like Jonathan said, I run a 100% online robotics coaching program, right? And then also, too, I have another venture where I do coaching. I do showcases for institutions like camps, schools, clubs, and I even help to set up clubs. Okay, so that's a final bit about me, but action items are most important here, of course, and time for some Q&A.
All right, so I hope your fingers are ready. We are ready to answer these questions. So let us know. Just shoot your questions. And just to plug some notes here, if we can get back at Jelani's book on the screen as well, which is a good college survival guide that you would want to share with your students and how to manage college. So if we can get that up again, and if we will also post the link for it in within the comments as well. And we're going to share all of Jelani's contact information within the comments as well. If you want to reach out to him, I'm telling you, he's like me. He's willing to assist you. And like what you tell everyone all the time, if you don't believe me, just try calling me. Try contacting Jelani. He'll be willing. He'll be there. So you can do that. And I know he's a very passionate individual about this topic, and he means what he says and he says what he means. Right. So as I said, we are ready for your questions. If you don't have any questions, I'm reading your silence that we did a good job in explaining all of these tools. Everything was well understood, and you are happy with the content that was shared, and you just can't wait to start using it. Am I right?
Yeah,
So we
sir.
give them time to get the questions in. No question is, bad. You can always ask any questions if you want any question, and we'll be happy to answer that. Right, so I've shared some of these tools. I think I've mentioned this earlier with my educator friends, and they were over the moon with these tools. One educator said that she couldn't wait to start using this in the next academic term, especially with the AR, and she being a science teacher, and have to draw so much of the, the just have to draw so much of the cells and the different diagrams on the board, and she was really trying to find a way of getting having that actually creating that environment where people students, sorry, can actually interact with the science tools and not be a bore to them, because that's one of her challenges, getting them to be interested in science. So with the tools, she really can see her students really being engaged with the tools being interactive and all. So yeah, these tools are really something, and you would want to try them out.
One person, Kaiser Ford, just said, I definitely can imagine that. Wow. Sciences, bio, chem, and physics would have been lit in
Yeah,
secondary school. But it
I
would have
thought
been
that.
easier.
Well,
That was
that was my thoughts too as well, Jelani. When we were first going through these tools, like, imagine if we had these when we were in secondary school. The endless possibility. The learning. I would have been all over this.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Ab-
So just give persons a few more seconds. If you don't have any questions, then as I said, we're interpreting that as in we did a good job and you understand all of the content and you cannot wait to just start using it.
I know, right? It's a good way of thinking. It's like, well, if there are no questions, we have satisfied the requirement. That's it.
Yeah. Yes,
That's
that's
how
how I'm interpreting it. Interpreting it. Yes, yes, yes.
someone said thank you. Thank you to you for coming. We appreciate it. You didn't have to.
Yeah.
You did, so we appreciate
We appreciate every single one of you, everyone. If you got here today, if you were watching this after the program actually aired live, that's all right. We are happy that you took the time to watch. And if after today's program you are inspired to learn more or begin developing a STEM learning environment, I would invite you to carefully consider the contexts and conditions that students thrive in. Now, think about student-centered learning, guided inquiry or discovery learning, project based learning, peer collaboration, networking with each other, and creativity. These approaches provide greater balance and structure to learning that can lead to infinite possibilities. Give your students a choice, the freedom to organize, structure, present their ideas, and learning in the classroom and virtually. Allow your students to take ownership. This comes with the freedom of choice in what they want to do. Let them choose tools to build, engage, motivate, and become self regulated. Give your students a voice and purpose. Help them to define their personal significance and what they are doing. Provide regional and global sharing opportunities and ways to revise and structure their ideas through testing and experiments. Yes. And finally, one of my favorite points here, provide opportunities for authentic experiences through STEM learning. Let them select projects that can become real life solutions in their world, in the context in which they live in. Yeah, so we've come to the end of this episode and would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on the upcoming episodes. And Jelani, just tell them a little bit of our next episode.
All right. So this week we give you some little teasers because we want you to understand how you could use the tools in some actual lessons. But you know what? The next session, the next episode is going to be focused on tools and resources. We're going to go even more in depth and review some of the STEM tools that are available for use in all levels of education. Uh-oh, mute.
Yes, I fall into the trap again.
2020,
Yes, quote
2020.
2020 quote, you are on mute. Yes, Jelani. I heard everything you said. I'm really excited about the next episode. I'm really looking forward to it because we're going to go deeper, as you said, into these sample projects that we have demonstrated here today. So once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, you be safe and remember to explore those tools.
Bye, everyone.